Alright, so today we're going to talk about soldering. First thing that we want to acknowledge when we're soldering is safety. Soldering can be kind of dangerous for more than one reason. First reason, of course, is the heat aspect. Different soldering irons can get different temperatures. This particular one can get up to about 800 degrees. So we don't definitely want to touch any of this area. Definitely when it's on. This particular model is on right now. We can see that by this blinking light over here. You can see that is on and heating up as we speak. So I don't really want to play with it all that much. I will show you some ways how to hold it here in just a second. So as I said, we want to be wary of how we hold these particular irons. Any soldering iron, you want to make sure you hold it the proper way. We definitely don't want to hold it like a sword like this and start stabbing or doing fencing like they're doing in the Olympics this week. We want to hold it like we've held something for many years, and that's the pencil. So you'll hold it, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll hold it whatever hand is your dominant hand, and you'll hold it just like a pencil. This way we can get very precise movements, whether we need to go forward, left, right. It's all forward. You're not actually pointing a soldering iron at ourselves, so, which can be very dangerous. You can burn yourself, you can catch your clothes on fire. As you can see that somebody has previously done to my countertop here, there's a hole there and a much bigger hole over here. Those have both been done with soldering irons. So when you're soldering, please be careful wherever you're soldering at. We actually have some metal plates that we can also solder on, but I prefer to have a nice clean surface. So this is the way that we're going to be soldering today. Another safety aspect that we want to be wary of is our clothing. Clothing, we don't want to have any loose garments. They can definitely get in the way of not only soldering, but can also get caught on fire by the very hot point of a soldering iron. Another thing to be aware of is rosin. Our solder. Our solder here, some of them have lead in it, and the fumes from this, breathing that in, can not be very good for you. So of course we want to be wary of when we're soldering. We're going to make sure that we're taking precautions so we're not inhaling these fumes. Of course it'd take a large amount of fumes to make you sick, but we always want to be cautious anytime we're dealing with our health. So you can see over here I've got a fan. You can also use an actual fume extractor. They make solder fume extractors. They're about $40 to $50 if you want to get a good one. You can also use seen some handmade CPU fan fume extractors. They're just actually sucking the fumes away, so they're not getting in your face and you're not inhaling them. They can also definitely cause headaches, so if you're sitting here soldering for a period of time, you're inhaling some fumes. If you get a headache, you definitely need to stop and take care of that. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn on my fan just so I don't forget in the future here. So we'll just turn it on low. And you can see that I have it sucking. That's going to suck the fumes away. Some people like to have it blowing, so the fumes are being blown away. I don't want the fumes to be, or the air to be blowing at my workstation, because that's going to actually cool down the soldering iron, and I don't want my soldering iron to be cooled down at all when I'm trying to solder. All right, just to show you some of the other things that we can do so we are practicing safe practices. We've got a few different things here that we can use to hold our wires so we're not holding the wire. Wires can get very hot when you're soldering, so you want to try and find something that'll hold that wire, or just have some longer pieces of wire so you're not so close to the solder and the point that you're heating it. This little gadget here can be bought at Radio Shack, eBay. You can get one of these for about $12 or so. Nice thing about this is it's got alligator clips. You can put your wire in there, put the point that you're going to be soldering right next to each other, and it also has a sponge and a holder for your soldering iron if you have a little bit smaller soldering iron and you don't have a station like this one is over here. Also comes with magnifying glass. In my opinion, I don't really like to use it. Kind of makes it look unfocused to me, so I find it kind of harder sometimes to use a magnifying glass. There are definitely some instances where you may want to use a magnifying glass to see what you're working on, because there are some very small microchips and some small wires that you may have to solder at some point in your life. But for today, we definitely won't need a magnifying glass. We also have this little bit larger one. As you can see here, we've got the sponge like the other one. That's to clean off your soldering tip. We have a larger holder here. We have a little bit bigger alligator clips here, so you can do some bigger items. And we've got of course our holder for our solder here on the back. The nice thing about this one, not only does it have a magnifying glass up top here, we also have a light on the side, so it can light up your workstation, make things a little easier depending on what you're working on. So that's just another example. The item that we will be using here today, and these were made in-house, fairly inexpensive. You can just take some number 8 gauge wire and a couple of alligator clips, and we just soldered these in here. So nice thing about these, you can kind of shape them to the way that you want. You can put your wire in there, and then you can just make them stand or sit on the side, however you want to do it. So if you want to sit up like this, you can definitely solder pretty easy down here with your piece of wire. So here in a minute, we'll be using that. I want to show you some different types of soldering irons. Of course, I showed you this one already. This particular model is about $30 online. I like this one pretty well. You can definitely get some much more expensive ones. You can get some in the $100 range, 80, 50, just depending on how high quality and how much you want to spend. But this one works perfect for everything that I've wanted to use it for. It even has interchangeable tips, so if I ever want to change the tip, I can do so. There's some other ones on the market. If you're just doing basic stuff, you can just get one like this. There's no temperature gauge on this one. You can't adjust it how hot or how cool that you want it. You just plug it into the wall and it heats up. Depending on how many watts it is determines how hot that it'll get. Also have this particular one here. This one's just a step up from the last one. You plug it in, it gets hot, but on the handle here, it actually has a temperature gauge. So you can see on this one, we've got 200 all the way up to 450 degrees. So that's a little better option there. If you're trying to save some money, you can go with this one. All right, so today we're just going to do a very simple thing. We're going to solder these two ends together to make a circle. So pretty simple. But of course, before I solder, I need some bare wire. So I am just going to take a simple pair of wire strippers here. These both cut and strip. So I'm just going to find the appropriate spot here. As long as you know what gauge wire it is, you can know what hole to stick it in. Each one of these are labeled 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, and 26. And most wire will say right what's on it. This one actually says 18 gauge right there. I don't know if you can see that or not. So we know to stick it in the 18 gauge spot, which is the second hole from the bottom. So I will strip both sides here. All right, Now the next thing we need to do is we need to put these two together so we can actually solder these. So, I like to twist them together. And now we need to connect the two ends together. So if you put them in a cross, like so, everybody see that? Then I will just twist them onto each other. So I'll twist one end, and then I'll twist the other end the opposite way. Alright, now I've got a good spot to solder to. So I'm going to get my little handy alligator clips over here. And you can put it in any position that you want, whatever is easiest for you to work on. I've got mine kind of set down like this. I like to work kind of close to the ground here. So let me see if I can zoom in here so you guys can get a nice good picture while I'm actually soldering this. Alright, hopefully you all can see that pretty well. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to take my soldering iron and I want to clean this tip. You can see that there's some oxidization on there. We don't want that on there. We want it to be nice and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off on the sponge. Alright, so now you can kind of see it looks a little nicer, but before we do any type of soldering, we want to tin the actual soldering iron. And what tinning means is taking your solder here and getting some solder on the tip of your soldering iron. Just get it nice and coated, and if you have any excess, you can just shake it onto your sponge. Alright, so now that I have this nicely tinned here, what you're going to want to do is hold this soldering iron underneath the spot that you want to heat up. While at the same time, you'll want to hold this on here for about 10 seconds. And what that'll do is that'll heat up this wire down here, and then we can melt this solder onto the top of it. The nice thing about this solder, this is rosin core solder, so we don't need to actually do anything with our solder. This will take care of everything. So we'll put this under here, leave it under there for about 10 seconds, get it nice and hot. And then we can just come in with our solder, and you can see that solder just melts right into the wire. And hopefully you can see that. Nice clean solder. It's actually sucked up into the wire. There's not a lot of big globs or anything like that. It looks nice and clean. And here, hopefully it should be cool here. And now I like to do the little pull test here, and nope, it doesn't come apart. And now if I were actually having to use this on a connection, I'd have some shrink tube or something over that, and I would have wanted to put that on before I did this. But since we're just practicing, we want to see what our solder looks like, what our connection looks like. So that looks like a pretty decent connection right there. That's pretty much it for the basics of soldering. Nothing too hard. Take some practice if you're trying to get to the more detailed stuff, but if you're just trying to do something simple like this, it's not too difficult. I hope that you've enjoyed the video and that you have many days of happy soldering ahead of you.